live. This is News 8 at 11.
Fotis Dulos was declared dead tonight at 5:32.
More than 48 hours after a suicide attempt at his Farmington home, murder suspect Fotis Dulos is dead. Tonight it looks like Dulos left a note declaring his innocence. He wrote, "His attorneys can prove it."
After shocking news of Fotis Dulos' death, his defense attorney saying his focus is now shifting to vindicating his client's name.
Plus, what's next for his vast estate?
Now that Fotis Dulos has passed, what happens to his house up in Farmington? What happens to his estate? We'll talk to the people who are getting ready to take over.
At the center of the tragedy, Jennifer Dulos. Her family releasing a new statement. Tonight, the big question remains, where is Jennifer? Now at 11, that breaking news, the estranged husband of that missing mother of five, Fotis Dulos, is dead.
His attorney, Norm Pattis, delivered the announcement this evening from the Jacobi Medical Center in the Bronx. And that's the New York hospital where Dulos was taken after his suicide attempt this week. Dulos charged with murdering his estranged wife, Jennifer. She went missing 8 months ago. Her body has not been found. Dulos' attorney revealed in court filings today a note was found at Fotis Dulos' Farmington home. In it, he continued to maintain his innocence.
We have team coverage tonight. Bob Wilson is outside Dulos' home in Farmington, but we head first to the Bronx where Dulos died tonight. News 8 Shayna Ferreira is live outside the Jacobi Medical Center with more. Shayna.
Yeah, Attorney Norm Pattis announcing his client, Fotis Dulos, died at this New York City hospital just after 5:30 this evening with his family by his side. Also adding, it's been a horrific day, and now the defense team's focus is shifting to clearing Fotis Dulos' name for good.
And we're not bitter, and we're not accusing anybody of having driven him to his death. But we wonder why, in the court of public opinion, the presumption of innocence was so quickly satisfied.
Norm Pattis, defense attorney for Fotis Dulos, announcing his client's death on Thursday outside of the Jacobi Medical Center 2 days after Dulos' shocking suicide attempt at his home in Farmington. Dulos' family flying in from Greece to be by his side as doctors work to save him.
So it's been a truly horrific day for the family, filled with difficult decisions, medical tests, and meeting the requirements to determine death.
Dulos was found unresponsive Tuesday from carbon monoxide poisoning. He was flown to the Bronx for treatment in a hyperbaric chamber, but the damage was already done. Now the focus for attorney Norm Pattis shifts towards vindicating his client's name and the charges he faced related to the death and disappearance of his estranged wife, Jennifer Dulos.
We have filed an unusual motion in the Connecticut courts asking to substitute an estate for Fotis Dulos for him as a defendant, to force the state to show its hand in a trial filled with evidence we think that amounts to no more than innuendo and unsupported suspicion. And as to those who contend that Mr. Dulos' death reflects a consciousness of guilt, we say no. We say it was more a conscience overborne with the weight of a world that was too busy to listen and that wanted a story more than it wanted the truth.
Now, Fotis Dulos' body will be taken to the Manhattan Medical Examiner's Office for a full autopsy to determine the official cause of death. As for Fotis Dulos' family that flew in from Greece last night, they have collectively decided to donate his organs so that Fotis Dulos may live on in some way. We're live tonight in the Bronx. Shayna Ferreira, News 8.
Our coverage continues. Fotis Dulos' home in Farmington now stands empty, and this evening we're learning more about a note that Dulos' attorney says he left behind. News 8's Bob Wilson joins us live from Jefferson Crossing. Bob.
Yes, the house tonight, dark, only one light shining through the garage window. What happens to the house now? We talked to Green Tea Leaf Realty, who's going to be taking it over with a brokerage. If it does go through the courts, they would be taking it in receivership and taking care of the house. But how does it play out now that a suicide note possibly was found in the car? Over the past 24 hours, police have served a search warrant for the home and car and found a note inside the car where Fotis Dulos attempted suicide. That, according to defense attorney Norm Pattis, he filed a motion in Stamford Superior Court to preserve evidence, which included the note. Quote, a note in which he declared his innocence of the infamous and heinous crimes that the state has accused him of and claimed his lawyers have the evidence to prove it, close quote. Meanwhile, the Dulos home empty, a contrast to the candles burning bright against the darkness at 4 Jefferson Crossing. So what will happen to the house now that Dulos is dead?
It does bring some amount of closure for everybody involved. I would expect once the judge signs off on the receivership order, we securitize the house. We hopefully hear from the family and what they want to do with his possessions.
The $5 million home is going into foreclosure, but will it sell when it goes back on the market? Or will it be more of a tourist attraction?
You have a lot of, people want to see the house. I mean, you have over 10,000 square feet. It's a nicely built house in a nice neighborhood, and, people want to see it for different reasons.
Giuffria says the building cost was about $5 million, but will it sell with its history and the media attention?
In the beginning, I think the house would be somewhat stigmatized, but someone's going to get a really good deal in that house.
And while it originally cost $5 million, they don't know what it's worth now. It has to go through receivership, then it has to go through the courts as far as foreclosure, and then it has to go through the estate, a long process that could, as he says, people have short memory, so he doesn't know exactly what's going to happen when they finally list the house. I'm Bob Wilson reporting live in Farmington, News 8.
All right, Bob, thanks. This all began on a beautiful spring day more than 8 months ago when Jennifer Farber Dulos disappeared. It was May 24th, 2019. A Friday. 50-year-old Jennifer Dulos, a mother of 5, was in the middle of a nasty divorce. She dropped her kids off at school in New Canaan and hasn't been seen since. She missed some appointments that day. Friends got worried and called police. They found her SUV in nearby Waveney Park and blood in her garage. The nanny says she found Jennifer's cup of tea and discovered 10 rolls of paper towels missing. An investigation began. Police find surveillance video they say is Fotis Dulos and his girlfriend Michelle Troconis throwing bags in a dumpster in Hartford. In them, police say a blood-stained shirt Jennifer was wearing that day, her bloody bra, along with mops and sponges and zip ties, all spattered with Jennifer's blood. Dulos and his girlfriend, Michelle Troconis, were arrested and charged with evidence tampering and obstruction of justice, both put under house arrest.
Fotis, do you believe police have the evidence to convict you on the murder?
Investigators spent 3 weeks combing through garbage at a trash plant in Hartford, hoping to find her body. They came up empty.
I just want to tell my children that they're constantly on my mind and that I love them and I miss them very much.
After searching for Jennifer for months but finding nothing, police finally filed a murder charge against Dulos, his girlfriend Michelle Troconis, and his lawyer Kent Mawhinney charged with conspiracy to commit murder.
Fotis Dulos arriving in his state police transport. There he is, handcuffed in the passenger seat. You can see him right now.
Fotis Dulos made his $6 million bond, but the financial deal that made it happen began to crumble. January 28th, the date of a bond hearing where it looked like Dulos would wind up back behind bars, he was late for court. Police rushed to his Farmington home. They saw him in the car, in the garage, with the motor running. Dulos was rushed to Yukon Hospital, then airlifted to a hospital in the Bronx for treatment in a hyperbaric chamber. 2 days later, it was over.
Fotis Dulos was declared dead tonight at 5:32.
The former girlfriend and former attorney of Fotis Dulos also facing charges in the case. Both could still face a trial. Legal experts have told us now that Dulos has died, the state is expected to drop the prosecution against him. But they may still proceed with the charges against Michelle Troconis and Kent Mawhinney.
Well, I've believed and still believe the reason the other two were charged was to exert some pressure on them to cooperate against Fotis Dulos, whom the state, I think, believes is the principal bad actor. The state is going to need to reevaluate how they're going to proceed against Troconis and Mawhinney as well.
Troconis and Mawhinney are charged with a conspiracy to commit murder. Troconis also faces evidence tampering and hindering prosecution charges. Earlier this week, we learned that Mawhinney also had his legal license suspended. At the center of all this, of course, is Jennifer Farber Dulos, who disappeared in May and is presumed dead. Her body has not been found. Her family's spokesperson, Carrie Loft, released a statement this evening saying, quote, "This is a horrific tragedy all around. No one could ever imagine what would happen to this mother of 5. Long before the life of Jennifer Farber Dulos took such a tragic turn, she was described as bright and funny and smart. She graduated from Brown University with honors and got a master's degree from New York University. She grew up in New York City and has just one sister. She married Fotis Dulos in Manhattan in 2004. She was his second wife. The couple moved to Farmington, where they had 5 children, including 2 sets of twins. As a stay-at-home mom, she wrote a blog called 5 Makes 7. Following Jennifer Dulos' disappearance, friends and family rallied around her children and stayed vigilant about trying to find her. Carrie Luft became the Farber family's spokesperson.
I and her friends and her family and everyone who's ever met Jennifer knows that she would never, ever disappear voluntarily. She is very gracious and gentle and thoughtful, and she cares deeply for her children.
Days turned into weeks, and Jennifer Dulos remained missing. There were vigils in her honor in the town she was now calling home with her children. Prayers were raised at a church in New Canaan.
When one of our own goes missing, it affects the entire community.
Connecticut businesses tried to help too by putting up flyers trying to find her. Sky Mercedes, the co-owner of Forever Sweet Bakery, said he just had to do something because the story was so deeply upsetting. He teamed up with pizzerias in his town and in New Canaan, putting her photo on pizza boxes.
We have to come together as one to try to help resolve this, because there's 5 children involved.
The children are and have been living with their maternal grandmother, Gloria Farber, in New York City. They've been kept out of sight throughout this unimaginable ordeal. Now with their parents gone, candles continue to glow at the memorial for Jennifer Dulos, just steps away from what was Fotis Dulos' Farmington home.
For everything related to this Dulos case, click the Dulos case button that's up right now on the News 8 app. Everything's there, from the disappearance of Jennifer back in May through the latest updates. There's also a timeline and full copies of the original arrest warrants.